What's up, everybody? I guess I had to do a video. I didn't plan on it, really. I know a lot of people had been asking me about it, but it wasn't until sort of the other end of this that I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do a video on this. So let me explain for those that haven't been keeping up. Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, probably seen him on, he's on Shark Tank, I believe, his show as well. Has a lot of money. But he and I have been going back and forth on Twitter for the last couple of days. And let me just preface this by saying this. I don't hate Mark Cuban. And this isn't, believe it or not, it's not even the first time he and I have gone back and forth before. But I don't hate Mark Cuban, so I don't want anybody to get this idea. But I did take exception to something that he said. But how this all started was and I'll get the little article that I shared. And I asked him, I was like, what is this? But if I can, So basically what he did was paid secret shoppers, so it's on a little private investigation, to secret shop businesses out here in Dallas to see if they were basically following these arbitrary sort of measures of reopening, these rules that were set out of the governor's office. And of course, they had found that most people were not. Now, the study itself does not list like individual businesses, and I guess we got to say the same. Mark Cuban has been critical of the idea of reopenings. He said that it's too soon, and so forth. He's going on record discussing that if you actually go in the Twitter feed, I blink him to it. Like, dude, you just said this maybe a week some change ago. I was like, if you had changed your position on this, let me know and I'll revise my position. But let's not high side here. What this appears to be is basically this is the reason why they publicized the results, in which it does sort of validate this idea that the state's arbitrary measures are not being violated, which incentivizes them to either slow up the reopenings or to even go back on it. And I don't think he's completely oblivious to it. Even if he maybe acts like it, I don't think he's completely oblivious to what this entails. So I was asking, what in the world, what's the point of this? Because this data is only useful to someone that wants to, again, legitimize this sort of idea of the state preventing people from opening up from business, which I've done, a million videos on this. I have a big time problem with these lockdowns, especially knowing what we know about the virus now. And look, I don't know why we have to pretend like that wasn't the case. But what happened out of all of this, and where it got, I guess you can say, a little bit weird, if you will, is that this turned into a conversation about more so philosophy. Because, he was very close to asking me who built the roads, pulling off one of those here, which you could see he's like, so no taxes. And he's like some of this stuff is new to him. Like, I would extend some of these positions to the logical conclusion, yes, of course I'm an anarcho-capitalist, and maybe he didn't know what that meant or anything like that. But you'd have to go through the feed to actually see the entire, we've been going at this, it's probably hundreds of tweets by now. And it turned into a conversation of philosophy. But the point that I was making towards the end of this, or as the end of me shooting this video, I guess, is that the position that I have, however, is not predicated on me being like an anarchist form of, libertarian. That's irrelevant to it. Even if I conceded the idea and I was more of a, let's say, a minarchist and believe that the state still should exist. And I don't believe in this light switch sort of form of anarchism or libertarianism that it's going to happen overnight, you know what I mean, or anything like that. I acknowledge that the state exists and is very likely to exist in my lifetime, or more so continue to exist. But I'm explaining to him that my position isn't predicated on that at all, actually. If I was a minarchist, it would still be the same. It is not right. It is not just for the state to decide when people should voluntarily be able to assume the risk of reopening their business in whatever way that they see fit. No new risk is assumed for anybody that wants to remain quarantined or, from a business standpoint, wants to have their business remain closed. The same exact concept. There's no new risk that is assumed. I don't know why I have to keep reiterating that ease of restrictions when it comes to the lockdown does not force you outside. You see what I'm saying? Or force you to not do what you want to do. The issue with the lockdowns is that it forces people that may not want to go a different route. It forces them to have to basically, in the eyes of some of these guys that want to have these lockdowns in place, basically it forces everybody to comply with those, no matter how arbitrary, no matter how nonsensical these ideas are. So you know what my position is. No matter if I was a minarchist or not, or a small government guy, the position would still be the same. That this isn't just that we have to wait on you guys to set some sort of you have to deem when it's okay for people to open up and basically try to get back some form of their livelihoods, considering that 30 million plus people have been put out of work. But he said something that I took exception to, which really incentivized me to do this video. I repeat it, and I had to keep reiterating. I said, that doesn't mean it can't happen. And what I'm referring to is that, again, this conversation kind of went off the rails, and it seems like he was trying to extend what I was saying to the logical conclusion, and he thought at some point I was going to be inconsistent, which is why, if you look at it, he keeps asking these questions. So no taxes ever. And I'm like, yeah, that's my position, right? That's my ultimate ideal position. However, which is what I was explaining to him. I was saying, because he says we have a republic where we at least try to respect the rule of law with those we elect, who are supposed to represent us, speaking for us. No taxes, no federal laws, no chance this happens. I said, I'm not sure who we is, as that position assumes that this is the preferable position. Election of those, I think this is a typo, election or those, not a typo, election or those elected does not equal just righteousness, nor does that negate the acts of aggression. So it doesn't become right, nor is it logical to assume that I've always hated this, like they represent us. Like, dude, you are an individual and I'm an individual, and we have different, maybe preferential sorts of action. To act like there's this one individual that can represent both of us is insane in the first place. But regardless, that does not mean that doesn't equal what is just. That doesn't equal what is righteous, and certain doesn't mean that it's preferable. Definitely when you consider what they all have control of. And I said, and so as long as folks advocate it, it'll never, of course, it'll never happen. Of course it won't. So, and that was in response to this last bit. He was like, no chance this happens. Well, it wasn't. I mean, for example, income tax, I mean, was that 100 years, a little over 100 years ago when some of that got implemented? But look, it can happen. It may not happen. And so as long as people are advocating that people be stolen from by the federal government, yeah, of course, or the state in general, of course, it's not going to happen as long as that's the case. This is why I always say it's more of a evolution, not a revolution when it comes to working towards a more freer society. This is why I don't like the idea of people looking at the culture or looking at how things are as is and then expecting every libertarian to come up with every single solution, because if we get towards a freer society, then the people obviously wouldn't be acting as as acting more so preferably, let's say that, if they are using aggression upon other individuals and so forth. So you can't take what exists right now when we don't have anything close to libertarians and individuals within it. Certainly don't adopt libertarianism and say, all right, so what if this, and this? No. If we have somehow made it towards a freer society, then we've accepted that these acts of aggression, at least for the most part, are not good things. But I reiterate that doesn't mean it can't happen. Either way, again, and this is me because I've had to do this a couple of times throughout this conversation, I'm saying Even if there were a more minarchist approach and taxes existed at some level, there is still no legitimacy in the state preventing people who want to voluntarily assume the risk to assume those risks and open businesses. So what I'm saying is now we're getting so far towards my ideal, which is not necessarily in place here. Even if I conceded that this state had to exist and was going to exist, the position that the state should be in charge of deciding who can open up for business voluntarily is a wrongful position, is an unjust position. That was the whole point of me mentioning this. But for whatever reason, he takes that to mean that I'm backing away from what I believe in. I'm like, no, I'm just saying that you've kind of moved the post. And I took exception to that. And I asked him, like, and it's still out there, I would love to debate you, Mark Cuban, on this subject of state taxation rights, because I don't think you actually know what it is that you're talking about. But nonetheless, like I said, I don't hate you. And I would love to, and you even said at some point, he was like, thanks that I criticize some of this. It helps them learn. I would love to have an open conversation. I ain't have to be like a straight formal debate. Let's have an open discussion about this, because I took exception to this latter half talking about just take the L. Take what L? Like, you thought you stumped me by saying basically he pulled a who built the roads. Like, so what if this, and this? Dog, that's basic level one stuff. I don't know. I've been talking about this for years. I have half a decade minimum as a public like commentator. So this is like level one stuff. Maybe he's not used to, and which is unfortunately the case, which is why people pull those cards, which I think that's why he was trying to get me to basically shift from my position and trying to keep extending it, like, so what, no taxes? Like, yeah, no taxes. I think he's like, well, no, so you can basically call me a hypocrite. No. You got the wrong guy. I've been there, done that. But I formally challenged this guy to a debate. Mark Cuban, we're in the same city. We're in the same city. And if you're still so, we can do this. Be sure to set it up at the Blaze. Or if you want to patch in, we can do that. If you're still social distancing or what have you, let's do it. Because I take exception, let's just say that, to this whole take the L. Like, what? Like, I got to run away from my positions or something like that. Like, what? You got the wrong guy. Maybe, again, he is used to having these sort of bare bones, basic conversations with those milquetoast sort of political commentators that have the same generic positions, be it mainstream progressivism or mainstream conservatism. I don't think he's actually thought this through. But I just wanted to do this video to give you guys an update on what's going on with me and Mark Cuban. I want to have the discussion. I was pretty sure we can have it at the Blaze or what have you, and you can learn. Maybe I'll learn from you. But let's have an honest discussion about this. I would love to, but I take exception to that. That's the only reason why I was like, all right, we can keep tweeting all day long, whatever. But when you like take the L, like you stumped me or something, like hold on, dog. No. Cause I don't think you actually are. Me personally, I don't think he's actually equipped to even have this conversation. Just because you are a public figure, just because you have a lot of money even, does not mean that you know what you're talking about. Definitely from a philosophical standpoint. I don't think he's thought actually any of this information through. So let's do it, Mark. Hit me up.